and welcome everyone for another Mugi's Primetime. It has been quite a long time, but I'm very happy to be back, especially because I'm joined by two wonderful guests. So we have Joey, yours truly, for the first time on the panel, and also Efsixx returning. So two American guys. I will have to try to defend like the EU side of things, but let's see how it goes. And we are going to talk about the Prime Championship circuit once again. It's the PCC 5, and we're going to talk about the group stage and the seeding round. And I can't wait to go into the details and also to see like what are the hot takes of the people with me tonight. So Joey and Efsixx, how are you doing tonight? Are you ready to rock in?
I'm doing good. Ready to rock for you.
Well.
Perfect. So as a little recap for everyone in the chat, for those that don't know, like the goal of this meta talk is basically we are going to recap everything that has unfolded and what are our take on it. And then we have a second part where we are going to just like discuss a little bit more in details with some like data things, notably like all the pick and bans, also the win rate of every single character, a little bit on team stat, and that will help us like kind of get into like the details. We also like items, role pick, this type of thing. So I can't wait to see all of that in action. For those that don't know how the Prime Championship circuit work, so first it's a tournament that is working on 3 different phases with a total cash prize of $3,500, which is the biggest cash prize we have seen so far on the Predecessor community, with amazing production quality. So of course, like I guess most people in the chat know about it, but for those that don't know, like it's a wonderful production with like the best team competing to try to get like a piece of the cake, basically. And so that all started with some group phase. And so in the group phase, basically we had 4 groups that all compete in round robin, trying to get like a first or second place in that group, because only the first or second team of each group advance to what is the seeding phase. And in the seeding phase, we have 10 teams that competed to get like 8 spots for the final event. And so the final event will be the 2nd and 3rd and 4th of September. But right now we're only like focusing on the group and seeding that has been played in the past 2 weeks. And as a little info on that, I love to have some trivia information. So here I'm getting my note out before we go into like the detail of the group. And so overall that has been like 55 matches that has been played, 45 for the group, 10 for the seeding phase, which represent like 28 hours of gameplay. So that's quite a lot of time of people playing. We got like over 2,000 hero killed, which is like kind of 37 kills on average per match. So that was like a bloody like 2 weekends to say the least. 382 objective taken, 668 structure destroyed, over 6 million gold gained by the players. And we placed like almost like 5,000 wars. So like vision was really crucial. I know it doesn't mean anything. I just love to give numbers because I'm a data guy, and that's basically it. So I think I've talked enough. And so we're going to advance into the group, and I will like leave the mic to Joey to say like a few things that you would like to share about the groups. And here we see all the results of all the 4 groups.
Yeah, so for the groups, a lot of it was just, that's probably like the part of the tournament where you see a lot of new teams coming into play, because this is when we probably see the most amount of teams entering the tournament. So previously in the last PCC, the ones that didn't like automatically qualify for the seeding round have to like do this whole process again, along with all the kind of newbies coming to the fun favorite here. And so like a lot of it is going to be probably some of the more messy games you'll see in the seeding rounds, because obviously it's going to be filled with a lot of newer teams that may be like super new to the whole comp scene. They don't know exactly the meta or the team rotations. So like for my team, for Team World, we got kind of like a easier bracket, I would say, because I think there was only one team we were worried about because they were more experienced. But outside of that, we didn't know the other teams, which is a good sign because they were like newer teams. And we have going flawless in our bracket, to say the least. But I know in other brackets there were actually a lot more competition. Like I think in Group D have a little more competition, and so I'm trying to read the name off right here. And Group B, I think, was also some great competition right there, because that's the one with Bad Timing and RR, who both performed really well in the seeding round last weekend.
Yeah, and Efsixx, like, want to complete on that?
I know we have the strong EU group over there, Group D. which was pretty good to see. I liked it because I got to see a little bit more of like what EU, like what it's like over there. Because not all the time. The only person I really watch from EU is Mugi, right? At 4:30 in the morning, trying to see some of the scrims. But being able to like see them compete at this level was really fun and exciting. But Group B for sure had some bangers. I thought it would have been a little bit more intense, but it just ended up being to where like I think it was bad timing for Team Gravity was such a close game, and I was like, how was this a close game? I don't understand. But it is what it was with that. But shout out to Joey though. Joey was smacking over there in Group C. We did a little watch party for him, man. I don't think anybody really understood what you're going to be like on the competitive level, Joey. So it was great to see that from you. And then what really shocked me was Group A for Fun Gamers. They're a bunch of ragtag, 5-stack casual guys, right? They just came in and was like, sure, let's try out, let's see what it goes. And they go 5-0 inside the group stages. And they've just been a pretty decent force going into the seeding round.
Yeah, funny thing that you mentioned Forefront Gamers, because like in their like roster, they apparently like allegedly have like 2 OTP Feng Mao, and since you're in competitive environment and there is like 2 ban per team, like Feng Mao was banned every single time, and so poor Peak had to play Richter offlane because it was like the only pick he was mastering in offlane during the whole tournament. Almost like group stage and seeding round, but they still managed to pull out as we have seen here in the Group A. Group A, the only group with like 6 teams, so it was like in a sense for a lot of people it was like, oh, it's the easiest group because there is like no like really recognized name. Like for instance, like of course we recognize like Rogue, we recognize Pink Ravens, that is like kind of like a mix up of Immune. We also add like Bad Timing, that is like kind of the Professor, and actually like they renamed the Professor for the final phase. And we have Rest and Relaxation, that was like known people even though it was a new team. So this group was kind of like nameless in a sense. We already have seen Double Vision in the past in the lower seed, like no communication in the previous like groups. But yeah, and so they arrive and they like perform like pretty well in their group. When it's a group that you have like to play like 5 match each, it's actually like in a sense like a harder competition from that aspect. I would like to go a little bit further. I will take the chance to get like a little bit of inside info, because here usually like we only have like analysts and casters, but like here, Joey, you get the chance to participate as a player on the seeding round. And so like, what were you feeling? Like, were you nervous? Were you like really like enjoy your moment? Like, what is the feeling of being a player a little bit, since we got this chance here?
Yeah, so this is actually not my first time playing the comp scene. I used to be on the old team by the name of Phoenix, but it was for my knowledge suspended after a while. So I think this is kind of like my first comp team I've been on in recent kind of times. And I guess the only thing I was nervous about was just playing ADC, because I keep making the joke that ADC is kind of like one of my worst roles to kind of play in Predecessor. I'd much rather just go offlane or support, but just kind of like for the player I was filling in, it was Haru, so I had to like do ADC, and it wasn't actually as bad as it was, because we actually did a couple of scrims before the group stages where I got comfortable with the getting to know like the team, because I think the big thing about teamwork that really impressed me was the fact that they have some very good shot calling, and they're very clear on what they want to do in this team fight. So it's kind of like an ADC. When you play ADC in this kind of competition, you have to like just follow the shot calling of your team, and knowing exactly who's playing who and like who we should focus, when we should disperse, just makes my life as ADC like pretty easy, I would say. So I think that it was very cool to see some of the inside comms going into the group stages for teamwork, because I think having like that really strong communication for those team fights, even when they get a little bit crazy and hectic, is a very vital skill, and that's probably going to be the biggest difference between team performances going into the finale in about 2 weeks.
Yeah. So like on top of that, I think the communication part is like a lot of times what really separates these competitive players from like just like a regular casual base. And I think if like more people hear those comms or got like even a chance to like really just hear the comms in general, I think that would just help people understand the game a little better. So that's pretty cool as well.
Mm-hmm. because it's totally a different environment in the comp scene. I don't think people realize like how important communication is. And right now with the PCC, we don't set heal the team comps. It's just like the casters, right? But it would be really cool if one day, kind of like you see in League of Legends Overwatch, when they do the casting, occasionally they will like show highlights of just team comps, like the really big highlights, the really big moments of play. They, instead of just casters casting over it, they let the player comps play out, and it just adds so much like personality, and just really gives them like a lot more gratification of what's going on in those like team comms, because the team comms do get intense. I have people saying that, why is this guy repeating this like one thing like 5 times, right? And on surface level, maybe it doesn't seem necessary, but like you have to have that person talking like that just to really emphasize what we should doing. Because with 5 people talking, if you only say things once, it gets lost, right? So you have to have someone really hammer down what we're doing to like, okay, we're gonna do this, right? So it's just a totally different experience when you get to like experience this level of communication from start to finish in these comp games.
Yeah, and that's like a very fair point, and that's something like I really enjoy about the group phase, like all those top team, like letting they come open for people to experience. And you're completely right. And I feel like in MOBA, like communication is actually like hard because like it's hard in every competitive game. But in MOBA, you have like both like the micro side of scene and the macro side of thing, and you need to kind of blend everything together. And usually on MOBA, like game are not as fast paced as Predecessor is, and so I feel like blending everything when something goes so fast, when you are in a third person perspective and you don't get like the full information compared to a game where like League of Legends, when you see everything from top and everyone kind of have like the same view, like makes it like even harder to share information and communicate. And I think like that's definitely something that, to be fair, when I was watching Rogue, I was like, oh, that's some clean communication here. So even if they're not there yet in terms like of individual skills compared to some of other teams, because like we see that even worse timing joining the seeding round afterwards, or Rest and Relaxation, that a lot of like very gifted mechanical player. But if you get this communication and you build and you work as a unit, like 5 people working as a unit is always better than 5 people just like kind of running together but not really like be like in one mind. And so that kind of like give me a lot of hope for rogues in the future, and they still like secure their spot very convincingly, even with you as a sub, which was not easy to feel like Haru's shoes, to be fair, because he's one of like the top carry in the scene. Moving on a little bit onto the Group D. So the Group D was like the EU group in a sense, because we had 3 teams coming from EU. We have Ronin, Pink Ravens, and Almost Baguette. So for those that don't know why they are called Almost Baguette, because like 4 of the players speak French except 1. And so there was like almost a baguette team, basically. But here it was a very, very interesting group. To be fair, like I'm currently like the coach for Pink Ravens, but I didn't get time to involve myself with them for like the group and the seeding round, unfortunately. But I was watching the games on Omeda City to be sure, like, can I go to sleep, like, relax? And there were like 3-0 in the group, and the last team that was like they had to face was Zero Risk. And Almost Baguette beat Zero Risk. Pink Ravens beat Almost Baguette. I was like, okay. And Almost Baguette beat Zero Risk like quite convincingly. So I was like, okay, it's fine. 4-0. Pink Ravens go further in the tournament. And then I watched the last game and they lost against Zero Risk, and I was like, oh man, what is the tiebreaker rule? I don't even know what is the tiebreaker rule. Like, did they advance or not? But I decided to wait for the next day, and then I asked. And actually, for those that don't know in chat, since here we have this super like weird situation of like all top 3 teams basically have always like lost against one of the other and beat one of the other. That means that even like their opposite like strengths is exactly the same. So the tiebreaker rule got into place, and it's like the team that play their match the fastest. And so in that, it's like Pink Ravens that was like, I think at 27 minutes on average time, Almost Baguette at 28 minutes on average time, and Zero Risk that was at 30 minutes on average time. And to be fair, like, I have to admit, like, I'm a EU guy, but like the EU people here on the group D was like, oh, this group is so easy. Like 2 teams of EU is going to advance, no problem. Like absolutely no sweat. I wouldn't say that. Like it's still 2 EU teams that advance, but no sweat. Like maybe not so easy.
I mean, just to add on to that. Oh my god. Zero Risk was like one of those teams that like kind of came up like last minute as well, right? I think they were like, "Oh, we're gonna try and go here," and like I think they had about 2 weeks of practice, and they actually surprised everybody with like how they played. I was like, first of all, you guys got that far, and then you guys did the biggest upset in PCC ever, right? Just going after Big Ravens, and we're just like, oh my word. I think they just pull something out of their hat. They're like, we don't have anything to lose. We're just gonna throw something just completely off the wall, like when it comes to like comp wise, and just like, see if it works. And for some reason, it worked. And I think Mumus was like one of the biggest players in that just by using his knowledge is like, hey guys, we're just gonna play this with our strength, and they did that, and then they just, oh man, it was a great game just to even watch in general.
It was like for those that didn't watch the game, like Momus go for like a cheese invade with the Countess, and apparently you can go like a little tactic as the Shadow Sleep that does a lot of damage on the red minion. You just like Shadow Sleep, hunt at the same time, and you just like say bye bye, I'm out, and you stole like the enemy jungles like big camp, and like Pink Ravens weren't ready for that at all. But yeah, it was very close, and to be fair, like Zero Risk could have like advanced. I think like none of those teams knew the tiebreaker rules entering that group, so I guess it was a surprise for everyone. And like in the end, it's like, yeah, we got the chance that we have two EU team that advances, but it wasn't as easy. And but it was it makes good story and good content in the end, so I was happy about it.
I mean, I think that was the very first time that rule ever in PCC actually came up of use. Because, like you were saying, every time it was like most people just move on, right? It wasn't really anything too bad. But that's like one of the things to also say, like the competition in the PCC just increased so much since the first one.
And I guess like last group, group B. To be fair, I feel like it was like the hardest in terms of competition. Like for any like team getting into group B, that weren't like bad timing or rest and relaxation, I felt like it was like very hard because like those two teams are like definitely like one of the best and have like a shot to get like to win the whole thing. And so like for Boosie, Faded, Gravity, and Team Beast to be able to just like have a shot of advancing to the seeding phase, it was kind of the death group for like the lower team in a sense. Here, but the only thing like I would say, like I think everyone got kind of impressed by how Western Relaxation has been performing so far. It's like the first time they participating as their unit, as 5-player in a tournament, and so far like they're rocking it, and we will see it even further in the seeding round. Any last thought on the group phase, or we can advance to the seeding round?
Yeah, I think we've hit the group stages pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move on then. And so like here we do have the seeding round. So I tried my best to represent a little bit the format and have like all the information displayed. When it comes to the seeding round, like the all top 1 and top 2 team from the group, H group like advance, and we also like add 2 teams that were already qualified from the previous PCC because they finished like first and second in the previous PCC, and those 2 teams are Even Worse Timing and Dirty Like and the Boys. And here, just watching at this graph, I'm like, how the hell people are going to follow which team is which if they don't know their logo? So next time I will add like probably the initial next to the team. But when it comes to that, so we do have Even Worse Timing and Dirty Like and the Boys joining the fray. Basically, if you're like Even Worse Timing or Dirty Like and the Boys or any of the top 1 team in the group phase, you already qualify for the final event because that will guarantee you at least the 6th spot. And where it's actually like a do or die situation is for the team that finished second because they're gonna face each other. And the team that won their first match will qualify for the final event, but the team that lose their first match will not qualify. And so like for me, despite all the matches that we're watching here, I feel like the most important matches is basically like at the bottom left of the graph, which is Bad Timing versus Almost Baguette and No Communication versus Double Vision. Like any takes on those 2 games? Maybe from you, Joey?
Sorry, I'm just trying to recall a little bit, but yeah, it's so. I didn't even. I'm really bad at remembering players' name. You gotta realize that. I know mostly of like all the top teams right there, like for Rogue, Pink Raven, and all of them. But I think the big thing was I think some people were expecting a little bit more from Bad Timing, like for them to finish 7th seeding in this whole group series right here. But I think for this like PCC, it's been actually a lot more competitive. Like you look at the top 5 seedings right here, they're all like really kind of solid core. And like, I think it was both BT and Pink Ravens where I think people were initially predicted to be higher up there, but I think honestly R&R especially would have took a lot of people by surprise, just finishing out second in the seeding round. So it's got needless to say, when we come to the final tournament in about 2 weeks, this is going to be a really intense 8 teams just going at it and see who can come up on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Bad Timing was having a little bit of like their sub issues. Like I think like at least like there was one sub like almost a lot of their matches going in just because of IRL stuff. But I think that's probably one of the big factors coming in for Bad Timing. But you are completely right because if you really look at R&R's roster, it was pretty much what was it Red Dojo's roster looked like, but I think they added Nerg and they kind of just went in there. They switched up some positions, like putting Bartle Do, I think his name's Unga Bunga, inside like the game, but they put him inside support and then put Aku over in offlane. So just them coming out of there, seeing from like the last PCC that like Red Dojo didn't get as far as he would have with Nerg, it just shows like how much they improved and but just by switching some roles and then getting up there.
Yeah. Like that's definitely something that happened. To be fair, I think like the Professor or Bad Timing, because like they were gonna rebrand to the Professor, like they're kind of like also like I remember like a previous like edition, they also like didn't fare that well when it comes to the seeding moment, but they end up like still like being a very force to be like reckoned with in the final stage. So I kind of feel like for those situations like you call like about the IRL stuff, like people can't really like commit fully, but for the finals phase they are ready most of the time and they commit fully, and here it's a different squad that the people have to face, so they're kind of doing like the minimum to guarantee that they're in the final phase, but then like they're not scared about anyone. Even though I would say that probably Bad Timing has the hardest road towards the final of any of the team, because like they will be facing Rest and Relaxation first round, and then they will have to face like the winner of Pink Ravens against Dirty Lake and the boys, and then it's obviously like the final. So I feel like sure they will have like a chance to just like fight their way back again against Rest and Relaxation, because they lost in the group stage against them. But yeah, that's something that was kind of scary. And to be fair, that means like here the EU group here, so we had Almost Baguette that didn't qualify, so like the only team that will remain for the final phase from the EU side of things will be Pink Ravens. And speaking of Pink Ravens, I feel like personally I was a little bit disappointed about their performance. Like losing to Rest and Relaxation, to be fair, Rest and Relaxation was a very, very, very strong team, but once again, like they also like lost to Forfun Gamers, and so it feels like that slip up against like Zero Risk wasn't like it wasn't just like a one thing like out of nowhere, because like no disrespect to Forfun Gamers, like they got the 5th seed, but it was also like a team that is like learning. They still have like limited champion pool. I don't feel like it's a team that is fully formed when it comes to competitive play, and Pink Raven still like managed to lose against them and end up with the 6th seed. Even though I would say like probably I would prefer to get the 6th seed based on how the seeding matches has been played, because I don't really want to be on the side of even worse timing. And here I'm going like to go for a hot take as well. Like despite Dirty Lake and the boys beating Rogue and getting like the 3rd seed over Rogue that got the 4th seed, I still think like from how I've seen like every single match play for the whole group and seeding, like I really do believe that Rogue right now is a much better team than Dirty Lake and the boys. And so like I would much prefer like facing like Dirty Lake and the boys as my first opponent than Rogue currently. So in a sense, you got the 6th seed, but I think it's still like okay, because then also like as a second opponent, I wouldn't want to face even worse timing, but probably I would prefer to face like either Rest and Relaxation or Bad Timing. And that's something that maybe you have a take on it, Efsixx. Like I really got surprised about like they only played 2 games, of course, the Tilak and the boys, but I was very surprised about like the level of that team. I think it's the first time they were coming with their new offlaner Lauber that joined them, but still I was expecting a lot more from them.
How do I say this? I do agree with your hot take, based off of like what was going on, but I like to think about it on the other spectrum. I saw something from Dirty Lake and the boys that I don't see from a lot of these teams is their defense, and their ability to come back. Even with their R&R game, I mean, they completely got shut out for me. Was it like 25 minutes? North was just holding W key and just pretty much leading his team to victory. And they came out with so many outstanding defensive plays and almost honestly came down to the last team fight. Um, and then what is it against Rogue? Rogue was winning the first 10 minutes. They were pretty much running the map, and they kind of just I don't want to say they threw it, but Dirty Lake and the boys just responded very well to being from behind. And the fact that they're able to respond so well from being from behind, especially when playing two games that day, not playing inside the group stages, right? So they're coming in like kind of cold, I would say. Just going from scrims. So I think we're going to see something a little bit different inside the actual like final days, going into the Elite Eight, and I think they're going to shock a lot of us when it comes to the gameplay. But I do think Rogue is looking pretty solid, and if they can get a little bit better on their they have already gone great with their communication, but a little bit better mechanically and accepting those calls, like seeing Blue Jay a little bit more aggressive in his zone. I think this is going to be a good series. But I think don't sleep too much on Dirty Lake and the boys.
Definitely, and that's something that also, like, of course, we're talking about all of that. It's kind of like our own impression, but we have to remember that there is like already like been a week that has been expanded since like Saturday, and there's still like 2 weeks more to prepare for the final phase. And in 3 weeks, in such an early like competitive environment, like a lot of things can move around, a lot of team can get back on track, and also like you also never know, like there is a balance patch that is coming like next week, and that can like shift things around. And also Zarus will arrive in the meta that can also like change a lot of things. So of course we're just sharing what is the current state and what we expect to see in the future. There is also like another team I would like to talk a little bit about, which is Even Worse Timing, that the winner, like the winner from the previous like edition, the PCC 4, in a very convincing manner. But there is a little bit of roster change. Like the previous roster, they had Ray in the jungle, the Snoop on the offlane, and this team felt absolutely like unstoppable. Like the Snoop on the Shinbi providing a completely new way of playing Shinbi and working well. Basically like the core of the old Even Worse Timing with 4 players just winning every single 4v5 they were fighting, while the Snoop was just please pushing everywhere. And here we have a change. We have like 100 Thief 6 that is joining the roster as the jungler. And we have Six that joined and played, Sismic that joined and played in the mid lane. And so they put Shin, the old mid laner, into the off lane. And so I would like to know, like, what is your take on how, know that you have seen them play, only 2 matches once again, and how they compare before, like, with the previous iteration?
I mean, we got to start off like just like the player swaps, right? So I think losing Snoop and having to put Shin over there in that lane was a downgrade. No hate or anything, but Snoop, just going off stats, he was able to apply pressure by like any offlaner we've ever seen inside this higher level of gameplay over PCC. So Snoop literally just took over the game, and I know a lot of people don't understand how much pressure he was applying. I mean, he was up with like almost 370 CS one match, like competing against the ADC and the CS. He was getting kills as well, but he was like the first person to really kind of break Shinbi out into that split pusher that she could potentially be, right? And then we go in to see Six replacing Ray. My hot take, Ray is probably the best player in this game, hands down. Not just based off his mechanics, but his knowledge in the game of just MOBAs in general, right? He just understands everything that should be happening. He understands the items better than everybody else, right? And picking up Six, which just took a little bit of a break, right, doing his thing. But if I were going to place Ray, I would definitely be picking up Six, right? So it's not like a bad pickup. I still think Six is the number 2 jungler after Ray. I think the biggest part was picking up Seismic. That man in the mid lane is an absolute monster. I think at best, the best person to really contest Seismic is going to be Empty. But unless it's empty, I don't think anybody could really match Seismic just by the way he plays. He's an aggressive player, and still to this day, there's not a lot of people that can really stop him from being aggressive, even if it's like a 2v1 inside the mid lane.
Definitely a matchup that I would love to see, like empty
Right.
versus Seismic in the final, but we'll have to see if those teams like manage to get there. Anything that you want to add, Joey, on the whole seeding or even worse timing?
Yeah, I think you guys cover a lot of good points, but I really think that this is just going to be really intense because there's a lot of really good teams. Like even though BT and Pink Wave is down to 6 and 7, they could just really surprise all of us and do a lot better in this like the actual tournament because it's just a seeding round. It's just kind of for show for the most part. So now everyone's going to get a lot more serious and ready to go in the main event coming in about 2 weeks. But it's just gonna be really exciting. You guys don't want to miss the very first matches because you're gonna see some really kind of intense games right from the get-go.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like some teams are already like on the good path. Like for instance, if we talk about Rogue, like Rogue, okay, Rogue lost against even worse timing, and they lost against Dirty Lake and the boys, which is like the two like winner like first and second of the previous tournament. But in any of those games, like they're really like against Dirty Lake and the boys, they were ahead at some point. Even against even worse timing, like they managed to take objective structures. They really like fought, and it was like the little detail that actually like made a difference. And those little details can easily get fixed in 3 weeks. So like I really think like we probably have the most stacked tournament we ever had, and I can't wait for this final phase to unfold because I think like yeah it can go in so many direction. There is also like what I like is that we're starting to see like playstyle from different team. Like we have seen Rest and Relaxation really like going for this heavy jungle invade playstyle that really works for them. When we have seen like even worse timing, like they do have like this little like aggressivity from Six as Seismic playing around the mid lane and creating like a lot of pressure, while Shin is like mostly like creating like the space in the later stage of the game with the offline. And so each team starting to get like to their own playstyle, and that's very nice to also see that now we're exploiting more different strategy and all of that. And yeah, like I'm super stoked for like the second and third of September. Despite the fact that it was like just mostly for show and that we have a lot of teams that is like kind of lower level, like no disrespect, but it's like here we have like the tier 1 team, that's a team that qualified, and we had like a lot of tier 2 teams. So this data like take into account like every single match of the group and the seeding. So it's not like as contained as the usual data I'm presenting from only the final phase, but let's still try to extract like a few information out of it and see what we do have. And we are going to move on into the pick and ban data. And one thing that is also interesting to watch compared to previous edition is like the first time that we have 2 bans per team. So for those that don't know in the chat, before both teams are starting to draft, each team has a ban, and then after each team has picked 3 different characters, each team once again have a ban. So that's why like the number of bans have like double like compared to previous like iteration. But it's also interesting because now we have like a lot more ban on like a lot more like secondary pick, because we have a lot of ban that is like targeted about like what the enemy team is starting to build and how can we like deny that. So just like from the data, like any take, and maybe like Joey, you can start on this aspect of like, the data analysis.
Yeah, so the big thing that I noticed from not only casting the tournament but also playing in these drafts myself is the fact that there's a lot of value being put into flex picks, especially in that first half. So you see picks like Bellica, Richter, Steel, like see those kind of picks being really popular, and part of it's because they just flex in at least 2 different roles. Bellica can go mid and support. She's like really probably top of the game in both mid and support. Richter is someone that's really good support as always, but he's actually really good in the offlane and jungle as well. So yeah, you have a character that can be flexed well into 3 roles, and of course Steel can be offlane support and do decent in the jungle. So a lot of these bans and picks you'll see are going to be targeted at these like flexible picks, just so like you take them off the table or you take them for yourself in these drafts. And these characters are just being picked a lot. So when you get to the second half, when you have a lot more limited options, you can easily flex these kind of picks into the respective roles and pick the more optimal last few picks for your roles.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing that really came out was the Kalari ban rate. The fact that she was banned 10 times kind of shows of how like one, Six comes in back into the game, and then you have North now playing jungle instead of in the off lane. Uh, this is where like people are like target banning to Kalari, right? That's why you see you get picked a little bit more as well. And I with the double bans, now you're starting to see people just like having to pick these tier two characters, I would say, into these comps because like oh man, I need to probably pick something that's safe and that's going to be able to go into something and understanding that we might lose a big potential pickup, right? So you're not seeing a lot of these meta comps, and then now you're seeing like maybe like two heroes that are really a priority, like Belica. I'm surprised. Uh, yeah, no, Decker's pretty close as well. It's just pretty close, but you start to see that Belica and Decker kind of just be up there. But I think it was last time Belica was like more like in the mid range. She wasn't even
Yeah.
up there all the way at the top, right? So Belka just is one of those safe characters that not a lot of people notice that can just kind of flex and go somewhere else. And you see them kind of shift to that as well into this new BCC, understanding like, hey, we might not be able to pick Bellica right away, right? So or in the later stages. So you see them trying to prioritize her. That's why she just picked so much because a lot of people are going for like, oh, I'm gonna bang Kalari for North and Six, right? Or certain people like these certain characters. So you see them try and go for that ban and they just counter pick with the Bellica to be able to have that flex. So I kind of just like to see like how everything's kind of shifting and just the meta in itself, like just these characters come out of different play pools as well.
Yeah, that's like I really like this idea of flexing and like myself like starting to get a little bit more into draft. Like with this second ban phase, like having those flexing option can really like create like some good opportunity if you flex last pick and suddenly you shift like the whole dynamic and you create like a positive matchup on your jungle, positive matchup on your offlane, and suddenly like you're already having a big lead. But that's only possible with flexing pick. And yeah, I think like Belica, like you said, is a wonderful flex. Is a wonderful flex because she's like a monster on support and she's a monster on mid lane. Like it's not even when you're
Yeah.
flexing, you're losing something. Like for instance, still if you flexing still off lane, like it's still like decent, but like support needs to be played in a very specific way, and jungle is kind of slow, so it's still flexible, but not as much. Like Belica is a monster on both role. Like she's crazy. When it comes to it, like there's another thing that I feel like maybe like there is like some data here. I feel like people like get stuck in the previous patches. Like for instance, like the most
Yeah.
banned character Rampage 20 times when the pick is not that great anymore. Like that really feels like to me that people didn't adjust fully to the new patch and they're just like, okay, just like keep doing what we usually do. And I feel like this Richter like being so high on the chart is also a little bit there because I feel like Richter is still a very strong character, but I wouldn't place him like that high.
Mhm. I definitely agree with you there, especially on the Richter. I still think he is. I don't think he's number two anymore since Rampage dropped, but he's definitely in the top three, top four kind of junglers to be able to adapt to. Just because there's a potential of if you're able to get that Belica right or prioritize that Decker, you're able to play off of that stun and get hooks and try and secure that one individual off of a play. But he's also very like you could go pretty much down the dark road with Richter if you don't get that early game going, right? If
Yeah.
Richter doesn't get going early, he completely is just irrelevant. We saw that with Dirty Lobber, Dirty Lake and the Boys and R&R, right? Richter wasn't able to do what he wanted. Chimera kind of just came out
Yeah.
of nowhere, right? Especially in this meta. I don't, he's picked 24 times, but only banned 8. Kind of just people not realizing his potentials, right? Like you said, it was a big thing between like the group stages and the seeding rounds, right? So if you were just to put this with like just the seeding rounds, you would probably see a little bit higher on him, just because I think Chimera is just coming into his own now, and since the double bans, Rampage getting that nerf, and he's not really that top jungler anymore. You're just seeing Chimera just come in, and if you're picking Richter and the enemy picks the Chimera, the jungle's not yours anymore, right? It's just not there. So yeah, definitely having him up there is just a little bit ridiculous. And having 20 bans on Rampage is unwarranted. I don't know why
Yeah.
there's 20 bans on Rampage.
I think part of it is just like a lot of it is combined with with the group stages, and a lot of people from group stages, like the new team especially, are probably following like what was the typical bans and picks. in like the previous tournaments, right? And of course, meta is not always static; it'll always be revolving as the game like continues to update itself, right? So I think kind of is one of those cases where, much like the phase, where a lot of people think she's bad, and all of a sudden she popped up really hard at one PCC tournament. I think this is the same thing with Chimera, is that a lot of teams are realizing too late in those tournaments that Chimera is actually really strong, just for the fact that he shuts down all these really popular tank picks. So you just can't pick Rampage first anymore, because then you leave the table up to Chimera just to get picked, and he's just gonna run you down in your own jungle. So going forward in this new PCC, it's gonna be interesting to see how all these different stats will change, because Chimera is, now that he's out in the open, he's gonna be probably a lot more popular pick, and probably pick ban rate even. So if Chimera is a jungler that gets
Yeah, definitely. And I think we lost a little bit Joey here. I think he's frozen, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But he will come
unfortunately.
back. He will come back. But yeah, that's a very good point. Like, also, I feel like those PCC events are what are kind of defining the meta, and the meta gets refined at the final final phase, and then we go again for a circle. And that was like a very good point by Haru in the chat, of the fact that the Rictor is flex in 3 role, and it's also a comfort pick for a lot of players. And I think like the Richter is not a bad pick. I think Richter is a very situational pick that can like be easily run down, and can also need to fit in his comp. And that's why like I don't think he's a priority pick. But at the same time, for a lot of players, like Joey was saying, like getting new to the competitive aspect, it's like sometimes hard to just like get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
A last pick that I'm interested about is like Twin Blast. First time he was available in tournament, and like 30 appearances in game, 16 bans. So apparently like teams like really liked it.
Mugi, hot take. I don't think Twin Blast. I think Twin Blast is also a situational character, depending. I don't know why Twin Blast is higher than Kira. I would say, maybe Haru or one of the ADCs could tell me. I think Kira brings more to the table than Twin Blast. I know Twin Blast is a little bit safer. Him going into a Stormbreaker, he pretty much clears wave in like, what was it, like 2 rotations of his autos without even using an ability. But I think Kira still just brings that overall team fight aspect to her. And then Twin Blast is more of like a single target player, right? Especially with the Deathstalker nerf. Kind of just threw him out there because this is when the Deathstalker nerf came out. So they weren't allowed to really use that broken build. So I don't necessarily see why he's so high up. But I think the big shocker for me is not even Twin Blast, it's Drongo, right? A lot of times, or going up to this tournament, Drongo was kind of like not even inside of that realm, right? So I think for me, that Drongo just coming out of nowhere and being like, hey, you know what? Like, we're going to play Drongo more. And he didn't even get banned a lot. So I guess I just think that was a great surprise seeing him in there.
Yeah, Drongo was definitely like getting back. Like I remember back at the PCC 2 and 3, I was like, please NA team, stop picking Drongo. He's not that amazing. He's a situational pick. But here in that current meta, like it was actually like a wonderful pick. And so like him seeing being picked that much was like definitely refreshing. So I was like trying to fix slightly like the cameras, because like Joey had like something come up. He will probably like try to come back up afterwards, but we'll try to do our best with Efsixx to keep advancing in that direction.
And then Toasty said wave pressure for Twin Blast. And then TB or Sam just feels very safe. Great lane poke, great potential to get a big chunk of damage from his ult safe distance. Still don't think people play into his most potential. I could see that as well. And I think that's a big part of, like, I understand the lane pressure you have with Twin Blast, but I still think you can still get that pressure out with Kira with the right support, especially if you're like playing off Ace, being able to get the root off and just go in. But I mean, I guess you could say the same thing with Twin Blast. But I guess we'll have to see a little bit more of Twin Blast just to kind of get all that situation out.
Yeah. Also, I feel like Twin Blast was kind of like this pick that most team like picked, because there was also, I think, like phase, we can see we have 28 picks, and a lot of people were very hot on the phase Twin Blast lane. Like, it's so strong, you're just popping off and you're killing everyone. And so I feel like a lot of people just decided to go with that. I still feel like Twin Blast is not like fully refined yet, and so probably like we will get there in the future. But I feel like people like were just like mainly like trying to get it to work. I would assume. So I guess like we can we having like Joey that is probably like coming back. I will wait that he's fully back to fix the camera again for the people.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not sure what was said while I was gone, but there's some intense lightning outside my house, typical for the weather, so it just cut the power off for a sec, so I apologize for the interruption.
No problem. Like safety first, of course. Like it's better to not risk like anything, of course. We don't want that to happen. So I will just like move on into the win rate, and I will let you take over on that while I'm fixing the scene, and so you can like probably like share what impressed you the most about the win rate. For people watching, once again, like the characters are in the same order of like their presence in the group and seeding phase.
Yeah, so we see the Belica win rate, right? And matching her pick rate, right? There's a reason why her percentage of winning is that high, right? And there's a reason why she was picked and banned so much. We talked about her flex options and just how powerful she's able to be inside any role that she's played. And I think that was just a great, outstanding thing to see, especially with the stats, because I still feel like especially for like the casual player base, they don't really understand how powerful Belica is, right? They're more comfortable with like a Gideon or like a Gadget. But Belica is just so dominant in mid lane and inside the support role that I don't know why we don't see more of her.
Definitely. That's also a good point that Young Linden is saying in the chat. Of course, like since there was the group stage and the seeding round, like it's probably like there is like, it was like all best of one. So already like that kind of like skewed a little bit the data. And also like there was a lot of matches that probably like weren't on the same amount of skill from both teams. So that definitely like also have an impact on the data. But basically like saying this Belica at 81%, like probably like against two teams of the same skill level, she's not 81%. But that kind of showed that the top team know that you should be prioritizing the Belica compared to like prioritizing the Rampage that we can see at 36% win rate, which is actually like horrendous. Or like also like another take like in terms of like low win rate is like the Gideon. Like Gideon used to be like number one, like the best mid laner that you have to pick every single game. And I feel like in the current meta, like Gideon is still good, but it's more like a pick that fits into a certain comp, and it's not like this mandatory pick that you pick like super early in the draft anymore. And I kind of show it. I think like a lot of teams fell for the trap of staying like in the past and just pick Gideon early, and that really like damaged them because they let the Belica through, for instance, and suddenly like you don't win anymore.
I think part of it is because Gideon is like easier to like counter, I would say. Like Gadget has been like a popular pick against the Gideon. She's able to offer as much like that AoE damage as Gideon does, but she does in a way that's safer, and she just have a favorable matchup. But also Belica is just someone that's doing really good. I see a lot of Belica being picked against Gideon, and even though Belica is not able to knock up the Gideon and interrupt him, you don't necessarily have to always interrupt the Gideon ultimate, because your goal is just to kind of just bust him down, right? And so you don't need that CC to do that. You just need team coordination to focus the Gideon properly in those team fights. So what kind of Belica really brings to the forte in the matchup is she has that really reliable like knockup to really get those picks and just really bust down targets, especially on that Gideon matchup right there. So I think it's just like I think Gideon is still great. It's just like I think people don't realize is that he's not always a first pick anymore. He's usually that safe pick people think he is, and I think right now it's like I don't think a safe pick is what we need in this kind of meta. It's more like getting those aggressive picks like the Belica that can W key the mid lane, because Belica is just really good at doing that in the mid lane.
Definitely.
And I think a pretty good point to bring up as well with the Chimera not getting picked up as much, but he does have almost a 70% win rate, which is just outstanding, right? I'm pretty sure last time we talked, Mugi, I brought it up and somebody was just like, Chimera is not good. I was like, I promise he's a good character. I just don't think people have really unlocked the potential yet. And it's great to kind of just see him coming into this PCC and just kind of showing like what he can do. Obviously, there's been some patches and some nerfs and stuff to really bring the limelight on him, but I think his potential has always been there. I just think Rampage was just a little bit too strong for him just to be up. But I'm glad to see him kind of shining through this PCC coming in.
I would say also like when it comes to this type of pick, like for instance, like the camera, I would say like also like people are starting to get deeper into like bruiser itemization. And so they kind of adapt more their itemization based on their comp and their enemy comp, which makes like character like camera get a better chance. But also like I would say like Sapphire's mantle is completely busted right now. And that really helped characters like camera, like this 300 health plus the passive to stay alive. That's exactly like camera doesn't need to build anything besides Sapphire's mantle now if he wants to stay in team fight longer and benefit from his passive. And so I would say like also with the rampage nerf, all of that like contributed of like this big camera like starting to rose and dominate like the jungle. Especially also with like the playstyle of like team like Even Worse Timing or Western Relaxation that know like loves to invade and pick like aggressive lane to follow up, and camera is like the best when you want to go for this type of early invade when you're supported by your team. And so also I feel like in the previous PCC, it was really like the jungle pick was really about like the lanes, and Rictor was phenomenal about that. But now like we see teams that start to use the jungle as a way to invade the jungler, and that will like start to shift also like the priority on picks. And like now a pick like Rictor, if he gets invaded in his jungle, like he's like okay, what do? I just run away or I died. So I guess like also like the evolution of like the strategy of team also like in fact impact those data.
Narbash is a good one as well. I think I was talking to Joey the other day about it. Is I don't know why people are not picking Narbash more. I think we came to a consensus of like people don't understand where Narbash fits in a team fight, because he's not really a forward or a backline support, right? He's kind of he sways back and forth. Like he's kind of in the middle, kind of going either a little bit more ahead or coming back a little bit for depending on who's low in these team fights. And just seeing his win percentage, I know he wasn't picked a lot, so it's a little bit less for him to like try and be higher win percentage. But the fact that he has 63% win rate, only being picked 8 times, kind of shows like the people that are picking him, like there's matches that he's winning, especially depending on the different supports and like the team comps. Narbash is a very good and very safe pick that I think a lot of people sleep on, and I'm probably going to see him a little bit more going into the final rounds here.
Yeah. And when it comes to Narbash, I feel like it's also like probably like his win rate is like not a priority pick, but if you draft a comp that can't deal with a Narbash and then it's suddenly Narbash last pick, you probably just lose the game, because if you don't have enough damage or any solution to deal with the Narbash, you're going to lose every single team fight that you're going to fight into, because the heal is just that strong. And so it's sometimes like here that can like surprise people at the end of the draft, which I think like probably like the top teams will like be worried about. And with the second ban, it's probably something that we won't see that much. But yeah, Narbash definitely like we know that Bad Timing and Professor actually like kind of love to go with this type of like double front line plus some Narbash in the middle plus 2 backline that are very protected. And then like suddenly like this front 2 back with the Narbash making the link between the two is like so hard to break. I think there is like one last data, and I don't know, like I think I would never understand that. Every single time I'm coming to a meta talk, every single time Decker is under 50% win rate, when every single time like we all think that Decker is a wonderful character and does everything. And I still I can't explain that. Like I guess here it's mainly because like sometimes like I would say team overestimated the Decker over the Bellica. And so I think like Bellica is better than Decker in the current meta. And so that may be like where the thing comes from. But once again, like Decker is not at 50% win rate despite being like the best support that kind of everyone like glorify.
I think a big play into that is people are just, they understand Decker is good, but they don't understand like what to go in with Decker as well, right? They're kind of just used to Decker just being tremendously overpowered, especially like in the early stages. We talked about people being comfortable, right? She's definitely a comfort pick. I mean, she's still probably one of the best supports. But I don't think people are drafting to really support the Decker, right? They think like, oh, we have a Decker, we win support lane. But come on, guys. I mean, there's a Bellica out there. She's not going to win everything, especially when there's Bellica is just there for that counter pick. So I think when teams are in this next 2 weeks, obviously, right, having 3 weeks to practice, they'll be able to be like, okay, what really does work well with Decker? Are we supplying and facilitating enough to help the Decker, like having the damage output off the stun or having the containment or the other CC options to add on top of it. So I think that's probably the major part going in it, because Bellicas are so easy, right? If you hit a knock up on Bellica, that stun is longer than the Decker ball and it's easier to hit. Obviously not as long range. And then that drone and her ult just is ridiculous. Meanwhile, Decker's ult is hard to hit. Decker's Q is not really like something that's really like known for, right? You don't pick Decker for her Q. It's not a thing. So I think just Belica just has more in her kit, and people have to like kind of learn how to play a little bit more around Decker by picking the right complementary heroes.
Yeah, like Belga is honestly like one of the best counts against Deca in the support from based on what I've seen and play against personally. So that's why you kind of see Bellica or Deca just being picked or being banned like in those first phase drafts because both of them are very high contested picks, but you don't want to have the first pick team just go like Deca because that team just pick up Belica and counter that, or you just want people to first pick Belica anyway. So you just see the Deca or Belica just being banned outright, just so they get that messy matchup out of the way and kind of free up some space for what kind of picks they want to go in that game. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where like people know Deco's really good, they play her, but they may not perform necessarily well with her. But for someone like non-bash who's not pick as much, but the players that do pick him realize why they're picking him are the ones that are going to perform a lot better on him in those smaller game sizes, right?
Yeah.
So I think we've kind of covered like most of the win rates here. And so we are going to move on into the team stats. And we'll kind of see how it goes here. So the team are organized by seeding. And so like here for the data, we do have the win rate of each team. We do have the KDA average for like from all teammates. The average kill, death, assist, gold, ward plays destroyed, the number of objectives, structures, and all those stats that I just like enumerated are like average over 10 minutes of games. So like they're comparable between, because not like, because like if a game is 40 minutes and a game is 20 minutes, of course that have different implication. Of course it's always skewed a little bit because if you do like 4 game of 10 minutes, they probably like there is no objective, and if you do one game like of 40 minutes, they probably like have 1,000 of objectives. So still it's not like fully comparable, but still gonna give like a good structure here. And also like we have the number of match played, because of course like even Worst Timing and Dirty Like and the boys, since they come only for the seeding round, they only play 2 match each, where every single other team like played 6 or 7 matches, which can like impact a lot the data. And yeah, like one thing that we kind of see there, and I think like it's like the underperformance at that specific event of Dirty Like and the boys. It's really show here. But in a sense, we can also say the same thing about Pink Ravens. Like we see like most team are around like the 4.5 KDA. And then we have like Dirty Lake and the Boys at 1.7 and Pink Ravens at 3. Really, really under like the average. And then we have the top dogs with like even worse timing at 7.3 KDA and Rest and Relaxation at 5.8 KDA, which is like kind of insane to be fair. Like 7.3 KDA is like a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's what we expect from even worse timing, right? Being the prior champions and just being such a S tier kind of team going in. But I think I like to point out where what I believe tells you the most about a team if they're playing well together is the assists, right? If a team's getting assists, like a lot of assists, that means they're fighting together, right? That means when they're getting these kills, it's not just, oh, I got a solo bolo, right? It's hey, we're playing together, we're being a unit. And seeing that bad timing has that, I feel like if they're able to clean some stuff up, I that's why I honestly believe bad timing so much is they're always grouping to fight. You see the most team aspect come out of bad timing that you don't see out of a lot of the rosters. Obviously, even worse timing is only at 14.9, which is not that far. But if you look at the rest of the teams that are in there, they're beating them by like a good 4 or 5 margin, which speaks a lot, especially if you're just going through average. So if I think these other teams are going to have to try to increase their assists and overall team play to really compete with even worse timing or even bad timing in general going into the finals here.
Any take on those stats, Joey?
Yeah, it's just like kind of like how Efsixx mentioned. You see, like even with Tyrant R&R, like being of the brackets, they have the highest win rates, but also have some of the highest assist rate right there. So needs to say, this is just kind of a good infographic to look at because obviously you can see like how these teams are really kind of performing well, but then you can really just break down and see which of these teams are kind of more so like doing great than like even like BT. They're they're very consistent, but they do really excellent in this assist right here. And then like World is kind of like they're like the middle of the pack right here, but they have like some of the highest first blood besides like even worse timing. So this is just kind of just a really cool kind of breakdown because it's my first time seeing this, and it's just a really good way to give numbers to kind of like different aspects of a team, and just being able to see where they're performing well in and where they're kind of falling really flat on their face.
Yeah. There is like one thing I kind of like about that here is that if you look at even worse timing versus rest and relaxation, and actually in a lot of stats they're very close. What gives like the huge KDA to even worse timing is that they're not dying. Basically, that's what like inflate their KDA. But in terms of like the number of kill, number of assists, the goal that is won, and like the objective that is being killed per 10 minutes, or the structures, like they're very very similar in terms of stat. Where I feel like even worse timing is a step ahead of everyone is their vision. As you can see, 17 ward placed and like 3.5 ward destroyed on average per 10 minutes, which is like above every other team. Like the only team that come close in terms of ward place is Dirty Lake and the boys, but in terms of ward destroyed, they're very like bottom of the pack. And so like the only team that consistently like get good vision while denying the enemy vision is even worse timing. And I feel like that's maybe like also why they died so low. It's just they have like such a good control of the vision overall. And so maybe it's not like only about the play of the player, it's also like about the ward positioning, and maybe this team is a little bit ahead when it comes to that. That's part of the strategy.
I think so as well. The fact that even worse timing has 100% first blood. I mean, it's only 2 games, but I don't think it would be too much off if you were to have them play 6 or 7 games. That's just scary, right? Because First Blood kind of sets the tone for the early game. And that's just a scary aspect to look at there. And I can't wait to see what they kind of do going into the finals here. And the 17 wards, oh my goodness. They're just, that's also, I think, one of those underwhelming stats that people don't really look at. Like, they're destroying the most wards and they're placing the most wards, meaning they're controlling what you see and what they see throughout the entire map. And most people might not think it's important, but there's a reason why they're number 1, right? And that stat just alone on itself shows why they're able to make these plays, why they're able to know where you're at, why they're able to counterplay what you're trying to do all the time. So get your wards up. That's all I'm saying.
And then like just to complete on the teams, I have like a few trivia info because I love trivia all the time, so that's how it is. And like rest and relaxation on only this group and seeding phase, they got like 198 kills. That's where the 8.7 kill per 10 minutes like appears. Of course, like the total of kills they got, but like they were super short of 200, and the only team that comes second to them, like it's actually the Professors with 151. Like 47 kills behind. So like these squad, like rest and relaxation, they're killing you basically all the time. And then like there's like a 3 more little interesting stat. Shin, okay, only played 2 games in offlane for even worse timing. He never died during the tournament. He didn't die once.
What?
So like he played 2 times Sevrok, but he never died. So that's like who will be the guy to kill like Shin the first time? Like we can bet if he's going to die like on the first game against No Communication or the second game. I guess that could be like a little like fun fact to get there. Also, we got Narik and Cold. So Narik is the mid laner of Rest and Relaxation, and Cold is the carry for No Communication. The only 2 players still like playing that like manage to average more than 1,000 damage per minute, hero damage per minute. It's like super high. Like those guys are just boxing people all the time. They're the only 2 players are going over 10,000 per 10 minutes, so 1,000 per minute in the player still in the game right now for the final phase. And the little thing about our analyst there, JoeYoursTruly is the player with the most played games with a 100% win rate in that event. He played 4 matches and got 100% win rate. Shin, even playing reverse timing is there, but they only played 2 games, so now like the reward is for Joey. Sorry guys, like Joey is better than all of you.
On my worst roll, by the way.
On my worst roll, just a little flex just at the end. Oh man, that's why the PCC doesn't have a team, because we don't want even worse timing to lose. Give everybody else a chance, you know.
Exactly, Efsixx. I'm right with you on that.
But I think that Naric's stat is kind of crazy. Cold is if you play enough on the NA East like casuals, you know Cold is an absolute maniac over there in the carry role. But Narc is kind of a big surprise. To be able to do that much damage output, I think that's probably one of the reasons why Rest Relaxation are just doing so well. He just be able to just put out that much damage. That's ridiculous, especially for a mid laner, right?
Yeah, it's but yes, like it is, but I feel like we have seen like in the past, like Sisming being very aggressive, also happy picker. But I feel like to be fair, like in top mid laners, I feel like Narik is in contention. Like you were talking about MT, but I think like Narik like he's kind of new to the scene. Like I didn't knew him before, but he really impressed me about like the quality of his plays and like the mechanics, but also like how he's creating opportunities for rest and relaxation. So I can't wait to see like also like those team like battling against each other. And maybe like if I don't know if Soul Reaper is going to come back to mid lane for Professor or not, but that could also like be an interesting matchup in the first phase, like between like bad timing against rest and relaxation. Who knows? I guess we can now advance into like the breakdown of stats by role, and so here we will have we do have like the carry role, and we have on the left the stat of the items. Every single graph will be the same way for every single role. Here we just have the items and crests that have been picked, only the tier 3 items, and only those that have been seen at least 5 times during the whole event. And then on the right side is only like the pick and ban picks and win rate of each character specifically on those roles. And I have to admit, a little message for the player out there. If you can select your right role when you go into the game, that would be nice, because then I don't have to correct like the data manually myself for every single game. And like, please do me that favor. So I gain like some hour of my life, please.
Please help him.
Basically. I know the names. But I won't delay it here.
Put it on Zitter. Call him out on Zitter.
Oh my god.
But yeah, so we do have like the carry, as we have seen like Drongo coming back in force. The carry that is the most picked with the best win rate of the event. So definitely like Drongo is up there in the meta. But still like a representation of every single carry. I would say like the thing that surprised me the most, and maybe we have like some information on that, is like Kira in the previous PCC was present in every single game of the final phase of PCC 4 with like a very good win rate, and here like she just like dropped drastically.
Yeah, I think that has to do with Twin Blast. Like they were saying, the pressure he applies, right? But I still don't understand why, because Kira just has that boxing potential. You're able to, especially like during the mid and late game when your support's roaming a little bit more, able to 1v1 a little bit better. I mean, the only person should probably not beat is Revenant, because Revenant just does a ridiculous amount of damage for no reason. But seeing that Drongo spike up there is completely just came out of nowhere. That's just like the biggest shocker to me.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it's kind of surprised me too, because I kind of expected the Trim Blast to be popping off hard in this PCC, and I also thought Revenant was also going to be doing really good as well, especially coming from group stages myself. But in the seeding round, Revenant was not just really picked at all, and there's a couple of reasons I think that was the case. One of it is the fact that Revenant is actually not so great into like tanky team comp, so it can be bad to pick Revenant against, let's say, like a Richter and Rampage on the enemy team. It can be really hard to try to like bring down these like tanks, right? So what Drongo kind of offers in return is like he just has a very solid all-around kit. Gascoigne can always really kind of shut down certain heroes. He has great self here for himself, but he has that also that great consistent DPS for taking down any like heroes, tanks or no tanks. And also part of it, that reason that I think Drongo's being picked up a lot more is because there's a lot of ADCs and that came to the seeding round that necessarily haven't been playing the game as much recently. They only played the game for about a week before they kind of got into the seeding round, and a lot of those ADC players are very comfortable on like the whole like Drongo from like the previous tournament. So some of it, I think some part of it was I think Drongo is just a safer pick for that second ADC outside of Revenant, but also I think it's a comfort pick right now for some of these high-end ADCs at the moment.
And then you could like just by your point of like dealing with the tanks, right? You can kind of just see in the items. You have your Sky Splitter, you have your Demolisher, kind of just up there, top two, and those are you're just trying to shred tanks with those, right? So that kind of just plays into that. And Revenant doesn't really dive into Sky Splitter as much. Obviously, Demolisher works on him, but that Sky Splitter is like one of those main items to like get rid of those tanks out of there. So seeing that kind of makes sense to what the pick and ban rate is kind of there for.
Yeah. And there's like a few interesting takes I would say here on the items. Like first, I feel like that of course we're having Drongo that popping up, and so also Twin Blast, and we can see like the on-hit effect starting to have like better win rate. Like we can see the Sky Splitter there, but there is like the Stormbreaker. There is also like this type of item that is working very well with the on-hit aspect. And also like what I kind of start to like is we have like much more variety of like crest. Of course, Liberator is still like up there. We're in competitive environment, having a cleanse on your carry is critical. But we start to see a few experimentation, as we can see like there is a few Artus pick at the end. We also have like some Witch Stalker, also like the Typhoon secret tech on Twin Blast to be able to have like multiple dashes all around the place. And so like I kind of like that. I feel like the item pool of carry, of course it's a seeding and a group phase, so it's not the same thing as final when you need to go like really hard and very like optimized. But compared to what we have seen in the past, like I kind of feel like it's startly like slowly expanding lightly, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, I like you too. You see, Terminus is not really picked up as much anymore as well. I believe last PCC, I think that was like an item. I mean, also Kira was picked more,
Yeah.
so you see, it skews a little bit. But seeing Terminus drop there a little bit, and Stormbreaker just coming up out of nowhere, right? I think that's because of the Twin Blast, but that's just great to see as well. Infernum is still a surpriser. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
think some part of it is some people were still trying to run that Twin Blast one shot build, which doesn't just look
Maybe,
as good anymore. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm very I one thing the big thing to know about Stormbreaker is I think that item is actually a really strong on hit item. It's just like right now in this current ADC meta, the only ADC besides Twin Blast that can take really great advantage of it is maybe just like a Sparrow, right? But Sparrow, as you see right here on the right, wasn't really picked that much. I think part of it is just people just don't want to play this ADC that can just easily be locked down, doesn't have much self appeal for itself. So right now it's just like only Twin Blast that can really run the Stormbreaker really well at the moment, but in the PCC. But you see right here, like the win rate is pretty up there, I would say, compared to all these other items on the charts.
Yeah. And talking about like the Infernum, the Stalker build, like I feel like people still like a lot of them who are still going 2 item, but I see like just the Stalker, if you want to go for the cheese build with Twin Blast is enough. You don't need to add Infernum on top, and you can see that Stalker actually is over 60% win rate, but Infernum is like just like probably 41-42%. So like probably it was a trap for people to just go like for the double item. What is surprising to me is like Viper, or like I guess like 15% win rate, like but it kind of comes down to the fact that I feel like we're in meta with a few lot less tank, and so probably like Viper is not as valuable anymore as it used to be in the past. So because Rampage is almost never picked anymore. Well, it was still picked quite a lot actually. So like, I guess I'm already like biased toward like the final phase, and like Rampage is not appearing anymore. But actually, he was there. So, but yeah, I was surprised to see like an item with that low win rate. But Malady in competitive like carry, probably like not so much a good idea. Like from what we see from that graph.
Yeah, going back to Viper really quick, I think the big reason why is that it's being like barely being picked anymore is because with these kind of crit builds, you can only like slot in 4 items, right? And if you want to like be anti-tank ADC, you just go Demolisher. It just gives you way better stats and gives you a better passive to go for that, right? Viper's it's not bad. It's just like you're limited on slots. So like of course, Fame is popping up, so you pick up that. Tainted One's also really good against a lot of the healing kind of people. You definitely want to pick up Imperator to really make a crit damage hit hard. And now all of a sudden you're left with just one more crit choice. And a lot of those times, the Marshal is just gonna really outperform the Viper for anti-tank. So you just pick that up, and Viper just won't be able to be picked up because of that.
That's a good point. So let's move on into the support. Our support so like kind of weird to me that there is a Viper at the end, but who is playing? Like I don't know who. Probably like maybe a mistake in the data, but Anyway, like here we have like a lot of different thing in the support, which is like actually you have seen a Faye and Howitzer support in the group phase, but thank God it's 0% win rate when that day appeared.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Faye and Howie Sports kind of troll at these higher level gameplays, right? That's definitely a troll pick. But I would like to talk about Dynamo. Even though Dynamo did get a change, but it's still a powerful item. That plus 10% damage on like any form of CC, hard CC that you're doing is completely ridiculous. I think that item is completely busted, by the way, because pretty much every support can proc it, especially like the main ones, like looking at the Decker, the FaZe, the Bellica, and then you have the Richter even there a little bit more than the Muriel. So it's just a ridiculous item.
Yeah.
One thing I am kind of surprised to see a little bit is just the combustion. Like it's not picked that often, but you see that win rate being really high up there. And I mean that's literally just because like in that support role, like the people that are able to use combustion are Bellica and Decker. Like you can see some of the builds being more tanky with like Dynamo, Galaxy Grease, but then you see some people, some of the really aggressive Deckers and Bellica support will go like the more combustion kind of route where they pick up this item and they may sometimes build even mega cost of those just so they act like a second mage, but the damage they can output with combustion and mega cost of waste leggings and that kind of support build is just really astronomically kind of high. So that's kind of the main reason why even combustion is not picked that much, but when it is being used, it's being used really, really well.
It's really surprising to see Requiem up there in one of the top items, right? With that huge nerf it just got. But it did pretty well to be a nerf item. And then Crystal Tier. I feel like my hot take is I feel like that item is kind of like a bait item. Because yes, increases your healing and shielding. But at the same time, the big passive of it is giving you 40 magical power and the ability haste, which is nice. But I feel like the 40 magical power is kind of like trolling people into picking it. And I don't think it's as good as items people really think it is.
Well, I would say like here I have like a different take on Crystal Tier. Like I think like it's definitely like not great currently on how, but I also like feel like it's because like for now people are not like fully utilizing the Crystal Tier. They kind of feel like, oh, there is a bunch of stat, but a lot of the stat is actually like lost because people don't really like play around it. Like for instance, like if that can like allow like certain builds to reach like some breakpoint, for instance, like the 20 ability ace, most people, even when they play with them, they don't really realize it. And since they're not min-maxing every single abilities, you don't really get like, but 20 ability ace on your full team and team fight is actually like enormous. But we're not there yet on the competitive side of Predecessor to really min-max those buff. And so that's why like I kind of feel like the Crystal Tier is not as strong as it could be. And so I think that's an item that doesn't need to change. It's just that we need to, as a community and the competitive aspect, get better at using.
I can agree with that as well.
Another Requiem, I think it's mostly like probably like an item that is picked quite a lot by Narbash, and so like the win rate is similar to the win rate of Narbash. So something that sometimes we kind of have like this combustion win rate is like Bellica support basically. That's just like picking the combustion win rate and get everything there. But yeah, it's really interesting also that we see that a lot of different quests once again. So like it seems to be like staying there. Like we have like the Sanctification, the Rift Walkers, but the Leaf Song as well. But we kind of see here that when you compare like Silencium and Reclamation, they're the top two like crests when it comes to win rate, and every single other crest is not really that great. And I feel like it kind of follow up also like with what we're seeing like from the picks that basically play Bellica support or phase, and that's basically it. Like the Rictor support it's just bad. Steel support, I think Steel support is actually not bad, but it's just like you need to be an amazing support and know exactly how you should be playing the Steel, and it's so different from any other support that I would say like besides like what we have seen like back in the days from Dare to Care and Clearcast when he was playing for Immune, like very, very few people actually know how to play Steel support. And that's why like people still like get baited into it, but you actually need to know exactly what you're doing and not miss any like strong timing that you have with him, which is like a very low win rate.
Yeah, I think people are a little bit... Oh, go
So
ahead, Joey.
I was just gonna say the main reason why you see it still not doing really good in the stats is because he's actually really bad against like these like range disruptors like the Decker and bad into phase two because phase can just really make the ADC just play really safe because you can just automatically pull someone to her even they get knocked up by steel. So it's just like the fact that he's just not so great into the Decker phase and Belka, and then all three of them are just really highly contested picks and popular picks in these tournaments just makes Steel just not so great. He's better into like the more like tank supports like a Richter, for example, but like Richter's also struggling too because he sort of gets poked out too by these three other supports. So it just kind of seems like right now in the support meta, it's really favoring these range supports because they just can able to apply a lot more pressure just from the range alone, and they have good kits for either keeping the ADC really safe or just having some really good like lockdown for the whole team to kind of follow up on that for those early games and for those mid to late game team fights.
And
Yeah, and Hex Bracers is just a shock to me as well. I always thought that was a great item, but you never really see it picked up, right? The stats on that thing is ridiculous. I don't understand why that's allowed, but I think we'll probably be seeing a little bit more in the finals here. The stats on that thing is amazing. But Selenium, I think, is also like a slept-on item. You never really see it get picked up a lot, like compared to like all the other items or crests, like Rift Walkers and Sanctification. But silencing the right enemy at the right time literally throws the entire team fight off for the enemy team. And even though it's not like a 500-second silence, but 1 or 2 seconds or 2 seconds is good enough to like completely disrupt exactly what the enemy is trying to do, especially from somebody who's trying to engage on you in that team fight.
yeah, and sometimes like if you cancel an ability on top of that, that's a lot of damage also that
A
you can like bring
lot.
onto the target. And yeah, like last item I think that can be also interesting is that we see that some people are starting to build time warp and it's actually like going well for them. And so like that's like we can see like this X-bound bracer time warp like kind of close to each other, and that's both like I would say both options that give you like a lot of ability haste both on their own way, like they're more from the passive, X-bound bracer also from the passive, but just like from pure ability haste. And yeah, as a support, you just want to spam your abilities, and those two like solutions seems to be like working well. And so I would assume like that time warp is also something that we probably like see maybe on the Muriel, maybe on the Bellica, maybe on the Decker, those carry that just want to keep spamming their spell all the time because when they spell are up, you can't really play the game basically.
Yeah, that slow on Muriel is ridiculous. I don't know why they increased it to 30%, but it feels like you're walking through snow and you're just like, help me, please.
So I guess we can move on to the mid laners here, and like for a little trivia fact, the item the most pick in the whole PCC history is of course Megacosm. No surprise there. And here it's still like the number one item picked by every single mid laner. I would say like we have 50% win rate, but I guess it's because both mid laner is building it every single game, so you can't have anything else, I feel like. But besides that, like I feel like mid lane is kind of the role that suffered the most of like very like same build all the time. And we can see that with like the epoch, the mega cost, the combustion, rest lagging is like the core of I feel like almost every single mid laner. And then you go into Caustica because you want the more damage, and then you have like one flex slot, and that's basically it.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of the reason why like the makeup like because like pretty much what you're saying is here is that every mage build like I actually play mid lane quite a bit recently and just try and follow what's the best items, and almost every mid laner has the best build out of being combustion, weight linkings, and mega custom. And I think a lot of it is just purely from the fact that in terms of like stats and passive effects from three items, like they just have the most when combined. It's just quite insane that both combustion may cause and provide a lot of high DPS, and then like even weight like provide a lot of DPS with the gain bonus damage when they're low, but also that inviolable movement speed that can really help mages kind of carry out in these team fights. So I guess the big thing about these three items is that just they give you everything you want for a mage in terms of damage and utility. So it's kind of like when you get to look at like more like Caustica and like Golden Skiff, it's just they're like great items, but they're more situational based, and you don't normally pick those items first. You literally just go for the damage items, which is in the case of Mega Caustic Combustion and Waste Leggings.
Yeah, and a lot of them picking up tanks, like the tank meta is still kind of there. Megacosm just pretty much slowly just chunks it away at them, and then that's why you kind of see like Wraith, Caustica, and Tainted kind of just still being high. Just you need that pen, right? Especially for those bigger guys. Um, but Epoch, I find weird. I don't know how you say it. I call it Epoch or Epic, whichever one you want to call it. Sometimes I think that's like a comfort pick when they can go like a Soul Bearer, which is I think better. And able to be utilized more, but like you're just sitting there in place as a mage, and I feel like most of the time that's not most heroes that's not what you want to do. Maybe a gadget, right? You could just throw all your abilities, hopefully get your epoch off. But I playing mid, I hate just being sitting there in one place, not doing anything. So
Yeah.
I want to see a
I
little bit more diversity
I
on
actually
like
agree
the
with
crest.
that because I think Epoch is just more of a comfort pick, or rather, like they look at League of Legends and you see like everyone, even like
Yeah.
tanks, just won like that stasis effect, right? It's just really stupid, right? But like in like Predecessor, I think it's just a different situation when it comes to like stasis effects, and when you like Soul Bell Quest, the like you said, I think it's really underrated because I think in terms of like if people know how to actually properly use like Soul Bearer or even Time Flux Band without relying being crushed on the Epoch. I think those two quests a lot of times could be better items to then go just Epoch in these games. It's just more like it's just one of the things where like I think over time as this meta kind of things continues to evolve, I think we might see a shift a little bit away from Epoch. I think Epoch's still a strong quest, don't get me wrong, but I think people are really underrating like Soul Bearish and like the Time Flux Band at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for the people that says time flux band's not good, I'm just gonna say it's more of a skill issue, understanding when to use it and where to use it, especially in a comp environment. It should be easier to use as a crest, understanding when your team's engaging and when you should be popping your time flux to try and get your cooldown back on. But that's just my hot take. Take it or leave it.
I kind of like the take on Time Flux Ban, and on that, like I would say, like team already have a hard time to just use a Torn Space of Gideon to just follow a target. So like, don't ask them to use Time Flux Ban. Like I think it's a little bit too high in the skill ceiling right now. But I also feel like Time Flux Band will start to like more plays when we start to introduce like kind of like you try to go for a snowball with a mid lane, like early mid game comp, and here time flux been like just like slap because you can go like for very, very aggressive play that is not that risky when you're ahead because that open up so much potential, but you kind of fall off hard in the later stage of the game where you need like usually like that epoch. But I also feel like currently like the champion pool is not big enough to guarantee this type of like hyper aggressive early and mid-game strategy. Like I remember watching like a scrim recently about rest and relaxation against another team that tried to go for that, but they end up having to pick the Shinbi off lane, which doesn't fit at all that mentality. And I feel like with this early mid-lane death ball comp, you need to have 5 pick that works in the same direction. And so maybe in the future, when we start to see that, the snowball comp, I guess Time Flux Band will be better.
It's time to shine.
Definitely. Any like takes on these Feng Mao contest, Twin Blast, Revenant, Murdoch in the mid lane? Is it the
Yeah,
jungle or what
Oh
happened in
I was
my.
there?
gonna say something. Like, do you remember? Are these from the group stages or the seeding round when this like
Both.
Remnant Murdoch was pick mids? Do you know top of your head, Mookie?
I think it wasn't sitting around. I think it was like all those maybe like the Murdoch and Revenant. I think it was group phase. Yeah, and Jolster is confirming it apparently.
Yeah, so it's just some of it is kind of skewed right there because of some of the new teams coming in and trying out some weirder picks, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, what I would like to see in the mid lane is more like physical assassins. Because if you guys are familiar with League of Legends, for example, they have very popular physical assassins mid, like Yasuo said, Yone. And just right now, we only have the more like either mage casters or mage assassins, right? We don't really have like a physical assassin really in the mid lane. And so like the closest one that can fit that bill at the moment is Fame Mao. But ever since they kind of nerfed Dread, it's not gonna be as viable to build Fame Mao in the mid lane, unfortunately. But I really want to see a mid laner that's physical based is meant for it, because I think when you have like stuff like that and in the mid lane kind of roster, it makes them a lot more for interesting dynamics and matchups, especially in these comp scenes.
Yeah, I think that would be definitely nice to see. Obviously, we need a little bit more heroes. Guess we have to wait, but
Yeah. And I think like the last thing we can kind of extract from that graph is like we already talked in length about the Gideon win rate, but we can see that other like mid laner, like for instance, like Morigesh was a top mid laner in PCC 4, Howitzer was a top mid laner in PCC 3, and we can see how fast the meta can shift with those two picks like starting to fall off flavor. And in a sense, I would say like probably like both pick having a big trouble against Belica, and so Belica like being like so strong right now in the meta and means that those pick kind of fall off. But Faye is actually like still finding like some good use. I would say like Faye is also like something that in group stage is probably like super strong because against team that doesn't like know to properly like space against a Faye, like one fly trap and you just win the game. But still like over 60% win rate, so maybe like we can also like expect some Faye to starting to arrive if the Belica get bans more in the future.
I think I I think people should have picked Faye more than the gadget, in my honest opinion. You can safely, I think she's a better pick just because people are going to be worried about that fly trap so much. And that's going to skew like what kind of crest they get. And you could potentially bait people into picking certain things with Faye that you can't with gadget.
That's interesting, and we'll see like if the teams start to explore on that in the scrims in the future weeks and for the final phase. Let's move on into the jungle side of the thing, and so like now we're like getting more into jungle and offlane, more tanky people, even though more bruisery people. And as jungle, like the first thing that just like blow my mind is we have Overload, Authentic Wardfire and Blossom, Sapphire's Mantle, and then there is a huge drop in terms of peak item. Of course, and the second like big things that we kind of see, but then we can go into more details, like this Rampage still being like up there in the peaks, but the win rate is not up there with the peak at all.
One shocker is the win rate on Citadel. I feel like that item is coming out of nowhere all of a sudden. You never saw that ever get picked. So I'm actually glad to see that. I think the 20% decrease on physical armor is a ridiculous stat. And if utilized correctly in those team fights, it's ridiculously broken.
Yeah, so no, I think the big reason why we see something like those overloads, fire blocking cards if it's meant to pick up is because, like especially with like Sephiroth's mentor and overload, they're kind of like, they just really flex between like the tanks and bruisers. So someone like Chimera goes overload a lot. Rampage can go overload. Savage Mentor can be also pick up on both Chimera and Rampage. So it kind of like, I guess in terms of like fresh options, it's just right now like the Tyrant's Crest is really popular because Savage Mentor is just a really nice stat stick for these like more bruisers and like the jungle and offline also for tanks as well. But I think definitely if you see 5+ right there because like just tanks, there's a lot of good tanks in the jungle with the Victor, the Rampage, the Steel, and the Sevwalk. But I think that's just kind of like the big thing is like these items just kind of fit a lot of different heroes, and that's kind of like why you see that really big drop off right there. And it's just very interesting to see kind of like I'm trying to look through some of these items like Bonesaw like being like kind of way down there because like I think Bonesaw is being sort of slept on, especially on like Chimera, but like I think only Chimera is the only one that can really use it right there. Um, but yeah, there's just like a lot of different items as you guys see towards like the 2/3 of the graph because you just got a lot of different assassins or boosters or tanks in this graph.
But I kind of like to see that we're like these bruisery item that we usually like not see like either people who are going damage or like super tanky item. But here we can see like the Draconum like coming back, the Citadel like Efsixx was talking about, like, and we start to see like a lot more bruisery itemization. When I feel like it's really like that when it comes to bruiser, you need to find exactly the right balance between like staying alive but I do enough damage to scare people. And I feel like bruiser is like the most complex things to build in MOBAs, and I feel like now we're starting to reach a point that people start to get to that knowledge and they actually like activate those bruiser, because bruiser is really like a character you go in and if you itemize wrongly you do nothing. Like you just get blown up and you do absolutely like no damage. You need to find this fine line, but finding this fine line is very hard. And so I'm very happy. Like also like Absolution, like starting to get picked a lot to be able to defend ourselves against like the PCC, but while like dealing damage and finding like how much, like trying to find little ways to get the damage, but also like the defense and trying to find this fine line. And I can't wait to see what we have in the future for all those things, because like I really think that Bruiser is like really an uncharted land so far when it comes to Predecessor, and there's like so much to explore still.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point as well, especially like talking about Absolution. Absolution Citadel just being up there is just absolutely crazy. But I think it's like players finally realizing like when they need to build certain items as bruisers. For instance, like if there's a magical user, that's the one that's really doing all the damage. You don't necessarily need to go into physical protection right away. And I think them understanding like when to build it, like you were saying, is just great. But Sevarog is absolutely blowing my mind. I keep looking at this chart and I'm like, I would never think he's that good in jungle. But I remember on one of your morning shows, it's like, why do people sleep on Sevarog? So like maybe you could like put the insight for me, because apparently this man has 100% win rate, being picked 5 times. What's the secret?
Well, when it comes to Sevarog, like Sevarog is probably for me like one of the best ganker in the game. And to be fair, he's still like his clear time is absolutely like not bad. If you're very good at stacking, also his stacking is not bad, and you're still Sevarog in the late game. It's just that Sevarog is not like a pick that you pick in every single situation from jungle, but at the same time, like jungle is a very safe offlane. That is this flex dimension that we were talking about in the early stage, that you can like have like this strong offlane, but if like for instance they pick the crunch, like suddenly you have a flex pick to be able to put it in the jungle, which is very strong. And with like character like Bellica, a lot of pick like Revenant, all those pick doesn't have any dashes. And if a Sevarog appear on your lane and you don't have any dashes, well, you're gonna get catch, and if the team like play well, like the subjugate is not hard to hit. A flash colossal blow, if you play Sevarog correctly, is not that hard to hit. And if any of those two ability connect, if you have like competent teammate, you're basically dead, or your flash is expanded every single time. And subjugate is like less than 50 seconds cooldown, so then you just come back and you just toast again.
Okay.
But one of the weakness of Sevarog is that can be invading in the early stage because he's not really that great. Like he's good at ganking, like Rictor is, but Rictor requires like a lot of setup, while Sevarog bring the setup to the lane, but he's not that great at fighting in his own jungle. So it's also like a pick that is not like an automatic pick, but since Sevarog is high up out there, like you can always have like the flexibility of switching it when it's best for your team, which I think showed that win rate, because he's not going into the jungle if you feel like that Sevarog is not going to be a good jungler, so that probably skewed that a little bit.
Okay.
Like this contest at 50% in the jungle, I'm really surprised, and one of that game is Momus against Pink Ravens, basically.
Yeah, Momus definitely screwed that stat a little bit.
But yeah, like it was like 2 games and they managed to, like I would say this 50% is like kind of a coin flip in a sense, but maybe like some teams start to really discover a little bit the contest and bring something with it. But yeah, let's close on the different role with the offlane now. Like jungle and offlane are the most like heavy when it comes to optimization, because I would say like there's like a lot of more play style compared like for instance mid lane and these type of things. We're not going to talk about the Twin Blast offlane, of course.
Let's not, Joey. It's your fault.
It got 0% win rate.
That's my fault, no.
So we're fine. Like the Rampage offlane got like 100% win rate. That is like okay, but it's only one game, so it's fine. It's fine. It's not gonna happen. But we can see like here very very tanky pick. Besides basically like the Shinbi and the Feng Mao. I'm surprised about like the popularity of Grux, to be honest, because I felt like Grux wasn't so great in competitive gaming, and here we can see like it's definitely like under 50% win rate, but actually like a lot of players actually like Grux. Like 15 games we have seen Grux. I don't know why.
I think we're going to see more of Grux in the finals when Zarus comes out.
Yeah, because Saurus has been doing, in my opinion, Saurus is just really, really strong at the moment, and I think people are starting to pick up on that. I see a lot of comp players actually practicing with him and performing really good. And so like to kind of shut down the Saurus, you don't have as many options at the moment compared to like other players. So like the big thing about going into the finales is that if that Saurus is getting picked, the Grux counter is actually really good against him. Like in terms of like just knowing how to match the pressure from Saurus and lane in all those team fights, Grux is just like one of the best bruiser counters. The other counters you can do, of course, is outside Grux, but for the first time ever, Grux is going to be picked at the counter pick, which is really cool. Like, I mean, Grux against Sevar is really good, but Sevar just has 3 abilities that he literally just runs away from Grux really easily with, whereas against like the Saurus, he's actually really, really well suited against him. So I'm actually, Grux is someone to keep an eye on just because if Saurus is getting picked a lot, as I think he is, then Grux may actually see it rise in popularity just to counter pick that in the off lane.
And then seeing Stonewall get picked up more, we've seen it. I forgot what game it was, but I think it was one team, even like the AD carry picked up Stonewall, and it was just to counter this Kalari. And I feel like a lot of people probably saw that and was like, why? But it's just such an amazing item to counter like a lot of these like players that are doing most of their damages from their abilities, right? I don't know why the ADC picked it up though. Maybe they were doing too much damage, but.
Yeah. Well, like the thing with the ADCs is like once you get the 4 items, you technically have enough damage for the team fight. So what you can do last item, I see a lot of ADCs build Salvation as a last item because that's just a huge static for HP, and then when you get low, you get a shield. So like pretty much big thing about ADC is the successful of the burst damage, but then you pick up Salvation last item to kind of counter that while still building physical power still. But going Stonewall last instead, it actually can be really good alternative choice because the Stonewall alone just gives you so many stats, like 70 physical armor. That's quite insane, along with the passive that reduce physical ability. So you just reduce physical damage right across the board, which is quite insane. So Stonewall just kind of does a catch-all kind of situation in terms of like reducing physical damage and all that. So like I think you see Stonewall right here. Being like a really popular pick instead of just Tainted God. Like Tainted God is still really solid because it's still good against like the Crunch and like the offlanes that has like healing in the kit. But like if you don't have to go Tainted God, then Stonewall just a just purely just a better alternative choice for more wild like physical defense.
And even in that regard, like even against Crunch, like Tainted Guard is good, but Stonewall is also like stellar because it just like blocks so much of his damage. So sometimes you just don't have to counteract the heal if you're just trying to stay alive. Even though, like, I really agree that Stonewall is a fabulous item, like, sometimes don't fall into the trap. I remember one game during the group or sitting around that this was a steal against a Rictor in the offlane, but there was a Kalari in the jungle. So the first item of the steal was a Stonewall, but then, like, if you have a Stonewall against a Rictor, well, you're just going to lose the lane and the Kalari doesn't even have to come. So first, like, try to win your matchup and don't bother too much about the jungler because if you lose your matchup, the jungler doesn't have to impact you at all.
And these finales, you should see that because like your first item is always going to be something that's going to take in consideration of your offlaner. It's because it's kind of a throw if you build a armor item against your offlaner that's actually not against the damage type, right? So like depending on like if it's the magical offlaner, physical jungler, or vice versa, like the items and priority is going to be a lot to pick. Like Tainted God can be really good if you're against not only the Crunch offlane but Chimera jungler as well. So it'd be like a 2-in-1 item in that case. So it just really like you said, offlane is very heavy on itemization. So you're just gonna see a lot of these different items pick or not pick in the first few slots. Just it really depends on the matchup and who they're against.
So I have another hot take here is like we see the win rate of Obelisk, right? That is around like 90%. And for me, it's like basically it's probably like going to be picked on probably like the Rictor and the Shinbi, I would assume. And like for me, it's like basically like the good Shinbi and the good Rictors, they go Obelisk, and then the bad Shinbi and bad Rictors, they go like for Tempest. I don't think we see Tempest or other things, but like I really feel like Obelisk is very hard to play. But if you master the Obelisk, like the Snoop was mastering in the PCC4 final, then you just destroy your opposition. But it's like so much harder to play than Tempest that I feel like most people go for like the safest option. But I think like in most situations in offlane, the strongest option is probably like Obelisk because you want to kill your offlaner. Because if you can kill your offlaner, you basically can win the game for your team by just like winning this 1v1 like over and over again. Because as soon as you start getting ahead with Obelisk, the guy can't play the game at all. but it's much harder to execute. That's true.
I think it comes down to just understanding, like you're saying, how to use obelisk. I think a lot of people they're like, oh, forgot to get a stack here and there, right? And it adds up to the late game. And I also think people don't utilize it, like they're trying to kill people with it and not getting their first instant damage off with the obelisk to turn the fight in their favor that much faster. So they're more comfortable with Tempest because they're just, okay, I can just press this button and it's activated, it's on, I don't have to worry about it, kind of thing.
I think that will be all for like all the stats. I think we're going to move to the little moment of the rewards, which is once again a little bit more of trivia. I think like that was like a lot of stats to go through, so a little bit like of a relaxing time and fun fact, and we're reaching the end of that talk show. And so we can advance, and there's like always the 6 same reward as usual. And we have the Lighthouse, which is the guy that plays the most wars during a single game. And this awards goes to Taken Kid with 34 wards in a single game with Decker.
Impressive.
And yeah, it's a lot of word like to be able to watch, and that's from Rogue. What that I find like is very like amazing is that we have Lance Cecil subbing in for like bad timing, reaping like 2 rewards, and he got the bestie, but also the false friend, which I feel like doesn't work at all together. Like you have to choose. Like you're probably like either one or the other. But it was the game when he subbed for bad timing and he got 27 assists. But it also like stole 27 CS from Survivor. Like,
so is he an angel or a demon? Right. That's the real question. I mean, they're both 27, and I think the 27 CS is a little bit more. So I'm gonna put him on the bad side because that's one of his big things. Is like he says a good support never takes CS, and you did it 27. That's 27 mistakes. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and here we have Lens that is trying to justify himself, like saying that that Survivor was dead. That's why like he kept the CS. But then like if you really are holding the lane, actually like if you go for a little auto attack, that push the lane back a little bit, and so like you're also like denying like maybe 1 CS for those 27 CS. So.
Yeah.
Only one thing that I'm quite impressed is like it's only 27. That means that every single support in every single game never have gone over 27 CS, which show how much like we have improved. Because I remember in the early PCC, this number was more around 40. And so like support I really like improve in that, having an impact while not remaining in lanes where they shouldn't be most of the time. The other rewards, we do have the Farmer, and this time it's like from Matt Corporeal on Calorie with 492 CS.
What was he? How long was that game?
I think it was like once again like the game, like I think it was like the game you were talking about, like Gravity against Bad Timing with Lance Cecil. And like this game was super duper long, like maybe like 40-50 minutes in, like something like that. That's what I could also get the Infiltrator of 12 wards killed by Matt Corporeal in that game as well. And and here we have Survivor, so like they almost like ripped all the rewards from that single game, basically. And we have like so many 27. It's actually like amazing.
27 kills.
Yeah.
So he was feeding Lance. Okay, so that was it.
But yeah, that was very nice. So on that regard, we're reaching the end of this talk. So here you will have access to all the socials of like all the person present. Of course, like keep tuning in for the PCC, the Prime Championship Circuit, because we will have the final phase on the 2nd and 3rd of September. That will be, of course, on their Twitch channel. And like I can't wait to see like even more games. Of course, once that will be all resolved, you can see me again like preparing a meta talk similar to that one to be able to go through on details of the data and how it has been unfolded. Thanks a lot, Efsixx and Joey, for coming and sharing that moment with me. It was a very I really enjoyed my time here and being able to share with everyone on the chat. I hope you have as well. If you want to share slightly a little bit about the type of video or content that you're doing, feel free to do so. Like Joey, if you want to share here, it's perfect, and then Efsixx can take over.
Yeah, so just yours surely. You can find me over on YouTube, of course. My primary focus on content. I'm going forward, especially since I started working with Omeda Studios. It's gonna be more like educational, daily commentary videos. So you see me like kind of doing gameplay videos, talking about like what I'm doing and why, what items I'm doing, why. Just pretty much just trying to explain my thought process because I think one of the best ways for like when I got into League in the first place, like one of the things that really helped me got to learn about like League and how to like play MOBAs, it was watching people like PK and Wolf and like just like really kind of methodically just talk about their gameplay and what they're doing, why. So even though I never like play mid lane in League, I just watch him in particular because his thought process is really helpful. So I thought my content will always be just gonna be like more so kind of explain what I'm doing because I really want to try to help the community out in that sense right there. So definitely if you're someone that's trying to improve your gameplay and want to see some daily kind of gameplay that can help you with that, that's something that my channel is built on. And of course you can find me on Twitter where you can kind of see what I'm up to. You can also see some pictures of my lovely dogs on there if you are dog enjoys indeed. So yeah, other than that, just Twitter and YouTube.
Thank you.
He has cute dogs.
Thank you.
He does.
And then I'm Efsixx. You can find me over on Twitch and Kick streaming. Just try to have a good time. If you guys want like do like VOD reviews if for like your games if you want, just to kind of help you out. But I'm over on YouTube as well. I try and dive into like heroes and kind of just explain like the very new player friendly. Maybe if you're an advanced player, probably learn one or two things. But primarily for like newer players trying to learn like a hero, we kind of like just dive into their kit and like their optimizations and stuff and like cool tips and tricks. So just kind of do that over there on YouTube every once in a while. We might do like a tier list or something, just so you understand the real tier list, not the fake ones out there. But other than that, yeah, you catch me over on Zitter as well, just clowning around looking at Joey's dogs. So.
Well, thank you a lot for sharing all of that. Once again, thank you everyone for the chat, for tuning in. I hope you appreciated the talk. You will be able to find me again like next week. The weekend I'm not here, but probably like being able to watch over like all the scream of the top team preparing for the Promotion Procedure Circuit Finals. And yeah, that was like a very, very good time. I will wish you everyone like on EU a very good end of the night. For the people in NA, like a good afternoon. And I can't wait to see you all like next week as well, because normally, still to be confirmed, but I should be able to have an interview with Blood Mordius when we are going to talk about items. That will be the topic. And so we'll go in depth about like how they create items, like what is their future like ideas for items. And so I will also like ask everyone that is interested about it that you can come to my stream and share like the question you would like to ask Blood Mordius. And also like on my Discord, I will like create a channel just like for that topic. And so I will try to incorporate all of those questions into the interview. As usual, thank you everyone for coming. You are all amazing. That's thanks to you that we can like all this good time and also like all the good interaction in chat. Once again, thank you Efsixx, thank you Joey, and I hope that I will have the chance to keep working with you guys in the future. And I think that we're out.